Is right. Electrolysis, right. Right, now look at the board. Now I am going to start the electrolysis. Under the electrolysis, firstly you have to learn. Right, now look at the board. Right, under the electrolysis, firstly you have to learn what is the electrolyte. What is the electrolytes? Right, tell me as you know, what is the electrolyte? Electrolyte means, before learned about the electrolysis, you have to learn electrolytes, examples for the electrolytes, non-electrolytes, examples for the non-electrolytes. Right, tell me as you think, what is the electrolytes? What is the electrolytes? මොනවද පුතේ electrolytes කියලා කියන්නේ? සරලවම ගත්තොත් මොකද්ද electrolytes කියලා කියන්නේ? ඔයාලට තේරෙන විදියට ඔයාලා ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙන විදියට මේ පාඩමේ ඔයාලා මීට කලින් ලොකු දෙයක් ගැන ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. රයිට් ඒක දිහා බලන්න ඕනේ. උනාද? What is the electrolytes? මෙන්න බලා ගන්න. මම මේකේ short note එකකුත් ඔයාලට දාන්නම්. මෙන්න බලා ගන්න. Electrolytes කියලා කියන්නේ පුතේ හොඳට අහගන්න. Electrolytes mean liquid or solution. Liquid or solution. Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Which conduct electricity. Which conduct electricity. Right. Now when we consider about the liquids, right, අපි liquids ගැන කතා කරත් පුතේ සෑම liquid එකක් තුලින්ම මට කියන්නකෝ කරන්ට් එක යනවාද කියලා. සෑම liquid එකක් තුලින් කරන්ට් එක යනවද නැද්ද? නැහැ. Right. Electricity is passes through some liquid while electricity is not passes through the some liquid. සමහර liquid වලින් කරන්ට් එක යනවා, තව සමහර වලින් කරන්ට් එක ගමන් කරන්නේ නැහැ පුතේ. Right. එහෙනම් මොකද්ද මේ electrolytes කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? So what is the electrolytes? Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Which conduct electricity. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? කරන්ට් එක ගමන් කරන liquid එහෙම නැත්නම් solution වලට අපි කියනවා මොකක් කියලාද කියන්නේ පුතේ? Electrolytes කියලා කියනවා. Electrolytes කියලා කියනවා. Right, then we will go to learn what are the examples for the electrolytes. Electrolytes, no? Right, now we learned about what do you mean by electrolytes. Electrolytes mean liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Right, as you think, what are the examples for the electrolytes? What are the examples for the electrolytes? Right, now when we consider about the salt solution, right, you must keep remember electricity is passes through the salt solution. Therefore, salt solution is considered as electrolytes. Tell me how to form the salt solution. Salt solution. Right, if you want to make the salt solution, firstly we should take some amount of salt and then we should add some amount of water and dissolve well. After that, salt solution can be prepared, no? Right, and then another one is copper sulfate solution. Copper sulfate solution. Copper sulfate solution. Copper sulfate solution is also considered as electrolyte. Right, tell me why copper sulfate solution is considered as the electrolyte? Why copper sulfate solution is considered as the electrolyte? Because electricity is passes through the copper sulfate solution. Right, now tell me how to form the copper sulfate solution. How to form the copper sulfate solution as you think. Right, if not, how to exist the copper sulfate in the laboratory? Right, copper sulfate exists in the laboratory as the crystal, no? Right, and also I have told you there are two forms of copper sulfate. No, what are they? Hydrous copper sulfate and anhydrous copper sulfate. Right, so what is the color of the hydrous copper sulfate? The color of the hydrous copper sulfate is blue color. Right. So what is the color of the anhydrous copper sulfate? White color. Normally in the laboratory exists the blue color hydrous copper sulfate. Why? Copper sulfate has ability to absorb the water from the atmosphere. No? Therefore, anhydrous copper sulfate becomes into the hydrous copper sulfate. So, copper sulfate exists in the laboratory as the blue colored crystals. Blue colored crystals. Right. If you want to make the copper sulfate solution, we should take the copper sulfate crystals into the beaker and then we should add some amount of water into the beaker and we can dissolve well. Right now, right, today now we learned about the electrolyte. No, remember what is the electrolyte? Liquid or solution which conduct electricity are known as electrolyte. After that we learned about examples for the electrolyte. Tell me, what are the examples for the electrolyte? One of them is salt solution. Another one is copper sulfate. Right. Then I am going to explain what is the next examples for the electrolyte. As you think, what is the another types of electrolytes you have to learn. Next one is acidulated water. If not, acidified water. Acidified water. Right. So what is the acidified water? You know water. But what do you mean by acidified water? Acidified water means, if not acidulated water. What is the acidulated water? Acidulated water means, if not, we can make the acidulated water like that. Firstly, we should take the some amount of water into the beaker or some vessels, suitable vessels. And then we should add few drops of acid. After that we can make the acidulated water. Right. Electricity is passes through the acidulated water also. Therefore, acidulated water is also considered as what? Acidulated water is also considered as electrolytes. Right. Again I will remember, right, today under the electrolysis, firstly we learned about the electrolytes. No, tell me, what do you mean by electrolytes? Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Right. So what are the examples for the electrolyte? Salt solution, copper sulfate solution and acidulated water. Right. Firstly write down electrolytes like that. Electrolytes කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලාම ලියමු පුතේ, ලියන්න. Right. Then we are going to learn about non-electrolyte. Now we are going to learn about our next topic. Our next topic is non-electrolyte. Non-electrolytes. Tell me, what do you mean by non-electrolyte? Non-electrolyte. Right. Tell me as you think, what do you mean by non-electrolytes? මොකද්ද non-electrolytes කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද පුතේ? Electrolytes කියලා කිව්වේ මොකද්ද? Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Right. So what do you mean by non-electrolytes? Non-electrolytes mean what? Liquid or solution which do not conduct electricity. Right. Now look at the board. Now we learned about what is the non-electrolytes. No, non-electrolytes mean liquid or solution which do not conduct electricity. You must keep remember, liquid or solution which do not conduct electricity. In the electrolytes we learned about, what do you mean by electrolytes? Liquid or solution which conduct electricity. Liquid or solution which do not conduct electricity is the non-electrolytes. Right. Let's go to examples for the non-electrolytes. What are the examples for the non-electrolytes? There are different types of non-electrolytes. Among the kerosenes, kerosenes is the non-electrolytes. Why kerosenes is considered as the non-electrolytes? Why kerosenes is considered as the non-electrolytes? Because electricity is not conduct through the kerosenes. Electricity is not conduct through the kerosenes. Therefore, kerosenes is considered as non-electrolytes. Another example is distilled water. Distilled water. Right. What do you mean by distilled water? Distilled water. Distilled water. What do you mean by distilled water? අපි ඔකට සිංහලෙන් කියන්නේ ආශ්‍රිත ජලය. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ආශ්‍රිත ජලය කියන්නේ පුතේ 100% H2O. වෙන කිසිම දෙයක් නැහැ. දැන් අපි බීමට ගන්න ජලය තුල මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? 100% H2O තියෙන්නේ. නෑ ඒකේ ගෑසස් තියෙනවා, මිනරල් තියෙනවා, එහෙම තියෙනව නේද? alright සමහරට ඇසිඩ් යම් ප්‍රමාණයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අපි නේද distilled water කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? 100% water වෙන කිසිම දෙයක් ඇත්තේ නැහැ. මේක තුලින් කරන්ට් එක ගමන් කරන්නේ නැහැ පුතේ. තේරෙනවද? Electricity is not, if not electricity do not conduct through the distilled water. Distilled water. Therefore, distilled water is also considered as what? Distilled water is also considered as non-electrolytes. Now you learned about what do you mean by non-electrolytes. Now tell me, what do you mean by non-electrolytes? Liquid or solution which do not conduct electricity. After that you learned about examples for the non-electrolytes. What is the examples for the non-electrolyte as you learned? Kerosenes and distilled water.